7 years ago, we were at the lowest point of our lives. At that point, I never thought we would own a home, let alone have the opportunity to give a tour of our homestead on YouTube. We learned really fast the importance of self-reliance, because for a while, we wouldn't have managed without the help of others. Now, we're working toward being the ones that are able to help others. Don't ever give up on your dreams. Start wherever you have to start and go at your own pace. Just work on making progress, one day at a time. We're going to start our tour of the homestead with the pride and joy thus far this spring, which is our fenced-in garden area. We had some other videos of working on that. So let me show you what we've got here. Close the gate behind me so that the dog doesn't follow me. So we have tomatoes here. I have 4 rows of various kinds of tomato plants. I have some cherry tomato plants and some yellow tomatoes, some Roma type tomatoes, a couple other kinds of tomatoes, some beefsteak tomatoes. The next row, actually 3 rows, are various types of peppers that are just doing amazing also from where they started. There are jalapeno and notapeno and bell peppers in these rows. All of the peppers and the tomatoes I started from seed this year inside, and that's just such an amazing feeling. Like, wow, I took a little bitty seed and now I've got these plants that are going to be giving me food. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I've got a few onions in here. Also, when I started these from seed too, and when I transplanted them, they were very weak and did not know if they were going to make it or not. And then I have my rows of potatoes that I just planted like last weekend, I think, and they are going crazy here. Now these are 3 different kinds of potatoes. There's a fingerling and a yellow and a white, and these are determinate potatoes, so they do not need mounded up. They're going to keep growing just like they are, and when it's time, then the potatoes are just going to be under this pile of hay, plus a little bit of dirt that I covered them up with. So that is the bulk of the garden this year, and it's not what we had hoped to do. We were hoping to get the other garden done too, but I am thrilled with what we've got going on here. And if you think about it, if you have potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and peppers, think of all the meals you could make with that. Those are, like, to me, those are the staples. I also have this little area of garlic that I planted last fall, and it is within probably a week of ready to pull up and dry out and be ready to use. So every single garlic clove that I planted came up, and we should have, I believe it's 27 bulbs of garlic when I harvest these. So that's another staple, in my opinion, for yummy food. So don't laugh, but this is where we are on garden number 2. We just decided to do a few things before we started throwing stuff down. We're being very intentional about where this garden is put. For one thing, you can see our gas tank right there, and there are gas lines, so we're having to work around gas lines. And then we had tree stumps here from tree removal, and I don't know if you can see over there, there's another tree stump, so we're having to work in between those. But Dave was able to, between the tractor and a chainsaw and a drill and an axe and I don't know what all else, he was able to demolish these tree stumps down to where we can bring that pile of dirt back over here, get everything leveled out, and have a nice level place for this garden. So of course, here's the shop where you've seen me working on some garden stuff. And here are the supplies that we have to finish this garden. Looking forward to that. The rest of the frames to put together are still inside the shop right now. Before we moved to Indiana, I'm originally from Indiana, but I had lived in Tennessee for 30 years. And it's too warm there to grow one of my favorites, which is rhubarb. Now, of course, it's the end of the season for rhubarb, so there's not a lot here, and it was just planted last year, so we have not used any yet. Next year, we should be ready to use some rhubarb and hopefully make some yummy pie. I just heard a deer. Another way that we are working on being self-sufficient, or really more like just trying to save money on the heating bill, is by cutting our own wood. And all of this wood that you see behind me has come from trees that have fallen in the woods. We've not actually cut down any trees. Now, when I say chopping our own wood, I do mean the machine chops it for us. So we bought this last year and we have used it and used it and used it. I don't know what we would do without it. It is a gas powered log splitter. And as you can see, we have a little bit of work to do. It's just not been the biggest priority right now, but we do need to get some of this out of the way because right now we can't even park the tractor under here. Next up is our noisy chickens here. So they heard that deer too, and they're kind of freaking out a little bit, but we have 1 rooster, 11 hens, and 4 babies right now. Now, our chickens, we do not eat the meat. These are egg-laying chickens, so they do supply us with plenty of eggs most of the year, and really enough for just us all year long. They slow down in the winter time, of course, but we get enough eggs to cover us anyway. So we have our chickens in this chicken run, and it was a kit that we bought. I will link it below. We got it off of Amazon, had it delivered here, and it was just a matter of putting the pieces together and then stretching the chicken wire across it, which came with it. A lot of people say not to use chicken wire for your chickens. We've had these well over a year and we've not had any issues whatsoever. I hope you can hear me over these noisy birds. One thing we have not done is put something around the bottom to keep things from crawling, digging in. But we've not had that issue. We have the dogs that are out all except for middle of the night, and in the middle of the night, the chickens are safe in their coop. So we really haven't felt the need to do that. This has kept our chickens very safe. We've got a couple tarps over the top just to help keep that area dry when it rains and to give them some shade when it's hot outside. It is attached to an old shed that was on the property when we moved here. This part over here is just a lean-to area that is dirt floor and good for storage, but this part right here we redid, cleaned out, and ooh, quiet down, girls. We've got an area to store all their food and bedding materials, and then we just built this wall. It has a ceiling on it. There's some storage up there. We built the walls and the door, and it latches, and Willie can come out here and look at the chickens but not get in any trouble. Here's our mama hen and the chicks are underneath her right now. There's one peeking out. She's doing a very good job raising these babies, much easier than me doing it. We've got the places for them to lay eggs over here, their food and their water. They've also got water outside. They've got their roosts for them to sleep on. A couple windows that we can open or close the screens, and we did put the wire mesh over those too, so things cannot rip screens open and get in here. We have a little chicken door so that they can come and go, and it is on a timer, so it opens first thing in the morning and it closes at night. I'm not sure I ever would have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes, but these chickens actually know to get into the coop at night before that door closes, and we check every night to make sure everybody made it, but they always have. So that is just an amazing feature that we're so glad to have. The next stop on our tour are the bees. We have 3 hives of honeybees. Again, we just got those this year, so we don't have honey from them yet, but they are going to be producing honey. We're out in the far backyard now, and if we kind of follow this area, we're going to come to another spot that I want to point out to you. Back here we have our blueberries. We also planted these last year. We have, looks like 4 that are doing well, and then 1 down here that is not doing so well. We're going to replace that and add another one down here. I think that one might have died as soon as we planted it. So we'll have 6 blueberry bushes back here. The next area that I want to show you is kind of a disgrace. It's our fire pit area. And yes, it is very grown up and weedy, but this is one of our fall projects for this year. You can see it had like a rubber, hard plastic rubber, whatever, edger around it, which has been torn up by dogs, mowers, time, whatever, weather. And then there's gravel with some stones. And then the actual fire pit even has weeds growing in it, but it is a great place. There's a few stumps out here to sit and enjoy. We've got our bench out here. We've had a small group out here a couple times and just sat around the fire, but we're just to the point right now. Hey, Willie, stop digging in that. We're just to the point right now that we're not going to try to keep up with it when we know we're going to dig the whole thing up and redo it. It's just not something on our priority list right now. So now we're going to head back to the back of the property. I'm going to show you what we lovingly call our hayfield. And it's just well, you'll see what it is, but Dave is able to mow this area, and then he bought a lawn sweeper that goes behind the mower, or the way he's used it is behind the four-wheeler, and just go through there. He'll go through there and he will sweep up all of the grass clippings or weed clippings, because we let it get pretty high, and he'll sweep those up into the sweeper and bring them up to the house and dump them, and that is where all of the hay that's over the potatoes came from. My silly cats come out here. They walk with us through the woods. The dogs are only allowed to go so far, or they get zapped by their collar, and they know that, so they won't be joining us out here. But we've got a couple kitty cats. There's that deer. I don't know if you could see it or not, but I got a glimpse of it. These trails through the woods, they were kind of established before we moved here, and we've just kind of kept them established and maybe even widened them a little bit. When I say we, I mean Dave. He just brings the mower out here and keeps this mowed. There's trails all through. There's a couple going off there that haven't been mowed lately, but they just zigzag all through the woods here. All right, we are now entering the hayfield. So this area here is where we get our hay for bedding, for garden, for whatever. We have raspberries. I see a few. They're teeny tiny. They're not great raspberry bushes, but you can see we do have some. Back here is also where we found our morel mushrooms this year, so that's pretty cool. I'm just out in the middle of the woods right now looking for a place to sit and have a little chat, but I just wanted to mention one other thing. Is we talked about where we get our vegetables. We try to get them out of our garden. We get honey from our bees. We get eggs from our chickens. We get syrup from our trees. And there are a lot of things you can do for yourself, but sometimes you just can't do everything. And so I did want to mention that we do get our meat from a farm that's not too far away from here, a farm that has ethical growing practices. Their animals are not fed GMO food. They are grass-fed and grass-finished, and we feel really good about that source of meat. So, you know, I don't really know many people that can do it all. So if you can't do it all, do what you can and then make good decisions on the rest. Okay, well, I guess it's story time. If you've hung around in the video this long, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you going on a walk with me through the homestead. And if you listen to this next part, I really truly do appreciate it. 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago now, we were missionaries at a camp in Tennessee, and in March of 2017, that abruptly ended. So a little bit of backstory. When we were called into ministry, our kids had just graduated, and we felt like we had a very clear calling from God as to what we were to do. And we sold our house, we quit our jobs, and we moved out to a house on the camp property that my husband and others had built. So it was a basically free place for us to live. We ran this Bible camp. It was the best years of my life. I finally felt like I knew where I was supposed to be. I had found what I was supposed to do. I really enjoyed our time at camp. I feel like I was good at what I did there. I felt worthwhile, felt like I had a purpose, and it was challenging, but I grew so much and learned so much and pushed myself so much. So 7 years ago, when this abruptly ended, we literally had 1 week to move out of that house. So in one day, we both lost our job. We were funded as missionaries, so we had a minimal income, but enough. And then all of a sudden we didn't. And we didn't have a house to live in. And we had one car that had over 200,000 miles on it. And we had a week to figure things out. And things just seemed so hopeless in that moment. I remember when we got that call, before Dave was even off the phone, I grabbed a roll of paper towels and I went downstairs and I just started packing up the china. Why the china? I don't know. It's not even important to me. It's not even my china, it's Dave's. I guess I just felt like I had to do something, and I just started packing. And at that moment, we had 3 dogs and a cat, and we honestly didn't know what we were going to do. And that's when miracles started happening. We were, at the time, leaders of the local Celebrate Recovery, and we led worship for Celebrate Recovery. And we were supposed to have band practice that night. We texted the other band members and let them know what had just happened and that we weren't going to be able to practice and that we really didn't know what was going to happen, and basically that we were homeless. And we got a phone call right away from our bass player's wife, who said to us, "You are not homeless. You do have a place to stay, and you can bring your animals." That moment right there changed our lives. It was like finding the gold under a pile of mud. And so these people who you're going to meet on our video next week, because I'm going to visit them, they let us stay in a double wide trailer that they have on their property with our animals. They didn't charge us anything to stay there. That gave us enough time to figure out what to do. We both were job hunting and searching, and then somebody else from the church said, "Hey, I've got this business that I run, and I'd like to start a nonprofit out of it. I'd like to help men get a job when they get out of jail. But I don't just want to give them a job, I want them to have training and life skills and everything that they don't get. I want them to have drug testing and go to classes and be required to go to meetings and just kind of that extra oomph to get their lives back on track." So he offered this job to Dave, who said, "This sounds wonderful, but my wife is the one that really has these skills that you're talking about." And so he said, "Well, I'll hire both of you then." So just like that, we had a job. And in staying with these people for a few months and saving our money, getting a tax return, things like that, we managed to save up $10,000 for a down payment on a house. Now this was in Tennessee. It was a nice home in a subdivision. It was not something we settled for. We loved it. And we worked there for a while, and about 2 years after that, the steel prices went through the roof, and the business that we were working with made steel trailers. So that business went under and took us with it. So we were back to not having a job. So I had decided before that ended that I wanted to go back to school. Well, when that job ended, I didn't think that was going to be possible. But God stepped in again, and Dave found a job in his niche of engineering that paid as much as we were both making together for the nonprofit. This allowed me to stay home and be a full-time student and not have to work. So I went back to school, and I got a bachelor's degree in health science with a concentration in diagnostic medical sonography. So I graduated, and when I graduated 2 years ago, that's when we really started thinking about moving. We had been through COVID. House prices skyrocketed, which, because we were able to buy a home before that happened, our home skyrocketed. Dave's company allowed him to go remote, so he didn't have to lose or change jobs. And I found a job up here in Indiana, making as much money as Dave makes. So that's how we ended up in Indiana. That's how we ended up on a homestead. We found this house in 12 acres, and because of the stupid housing stuff, it worked in our favor, and we were able to get this piece of paradise. And don't imagine we'll ever leave it. I can't imagine it. It's not perfect, but it's so much of everything we've always wanted. And there's so much room to grow. And there's so many things that we can't wait to do. So, 7 years ago, we were living in somebody's double wide for free, not knowing what was going to happen. And today, here I sit, content, thankful, blessed. I'm very thankful that you came along, and if you're still listening, thank you for listening to our story. If you have any questions, drop them below. I know this was a short version, and so many more things went into all of this. But here we are today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you joining me on this little tour of our homestead, and I look forward to seeing you back. I've got a couple little trips coming up. I'm going to take my camera and see what we get into. You guys have a great week. Thank you for joining me today. Bye. Hello, Mr. T. Would you like to say goodbye? Thank you.